Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. This is Gail Austin, the Managing Director of Kente Arts Alliance, coming to you.
And Mensah Wali, Artistic Director.
So we're happy to be here today. We want to thank Gail Boyd for offering and providing this wonderful experience to get to talk to her audience. So thank you so much, Gail.
Right.
So we're here to talk about our organization, which is Kente Arts Alliance. And also along the way, you may learn a little bit about Mensah and I. Kente Arts Alliance is located here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We got started around 2007, and that was quite a big difference for how Mensah and I were operating at that point. We were retirees and looking to really take up those things we really like to do now, not a job, so to speak. And it was, like I said, a very interesting experience coming out with our first artist, who was Lewis Hayes, who was my birthday brother. Mensah might want to talk to you a little bit about what that first experience was like.
Well, I moved to Pittsburgh in 2005, and after a couple of months, I went around in various jazz venues and tried to introduce myself and say some of the things that I had access to, some of the people in the jazz world that I had access to. So anyway, everyone said, we'll call you. And no one's called me yet. So, so we decided to move forward and present a concert with one of the artists that I had arranged to come to Pittsburgh, Lewis Hayes. At the time, he was doing his Cannonball Adderley Legacy Band. So we booked 2 nights at the Kelly Strayhorn Theater, and it was a great sacrifice to my wife because it was on our anniversary. But we promoted that event from the beginning of August until the date was October 6th and 7th, or 7 and 8. I don't remember which one. But anyway, we didn't have, the facility to promote on the radio and, do mass advertising, posters and stuff like that. So we got out on the streets with the help of many friends, and we went to every place in Pittsburgh where there was a jazz audience, and we gave out these flyers. And when the event came around, in the 2 nights, we didn't get 100 people.
We lost our shirts.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We put up our own money to do this. So anyway, I met a man there that night at one of those, Friday or Saturday night. May he rest in peace, Garland Rose. And at the end, the concert was October. The end of the year, near New Year's, he called me and he said, congratulations. I said, well, congratulations for what, brother? He said, for having the best jazz show in Pittsburgh this year. So I thought it was, a brotherly dig. And I just accepted it as that because he was there. He saw the 3 people that were in the audience. So I hang up from him. I come to the computer and I get a message from the man that was the head of the Kelly Strayhorn Theater at the time. And he says, the head, the heading, the subject said, congratulations. I said, well, congratulations, what's going on here? Open up the email, congratulations. This concert was designated as the best concert in Pittsburgh in 2007. I said, what? No, it wasn't 2000, it was 2006. Mm-hmm. So I said, man, what? the what was it? The Pittsburgh. Um, what's the name of the paper?
Oh, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Post-Gazette.
Yes.
Yeah. The Post-Gazette voted that show, Lewis Hayes and the Cannonball Legacy Band show, the best jazz show in Pittsburgh. Unbelievable. And there was 5 people in the audience.
It was so funny because you should have seen the people who were second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Yeah.
Like Tony Bennett, Ramsey Lewis.
Maria Shriver. It was just like huge names.
It was the who's who of jazz.
So anyway, that experience kind of just revitalized my spirit somewhat. And my brilliant wife suggested that we don't continue to go down that road that we went through, and that we become an organization that could get funded. And so that's what we did.
Right.
And that was all your work.
and we milked that for all it was worth, because every proposal I wrote after that, we had to say, and we were voted the best jazz concert of the year. So that was our first experience, and it's been pretty uphill ever since then. And it's been now about 14, 15 years we've been in existence, and we're hoping, crossing fingers, that we'll be moving into our 14th, 15th year. Well, we're still here, so the organization's not going anywhere. So, like I said, we lost our shirts, but we have gained so much from people who are now considered our patrons, funders who think about and talk about us all over the country, which is getting to be quite a surprise to me as well. So right now, as everybody's talking about, is the pandemic, and we're coping. Personally, I like to walk. That's how I have been dealing with this pandemic. We live in a neighborhood where it's easy to walk, and every chance I get, I like to take a walk, and it has done wonders for me. Mensah, how are you dealing with the pandemic?
Day by day, every day is a blessing. And, I walk, I go to physical therapy, I go to aqua therapy, and, you got to stay in the flow and keep this thing going. I keep saying to myself and others that I have at least another 20 years to go, because I'd like to see my grandson, 20 years down the road. And, the youngest is 10. So here we go.
And one of the things that we have taken kind of some musical comfort in is streaming. I think I'd be the first one to admit I was not too thrilled with streaming at the beginning of the pandemic. And it just didn't give us that feeling that live music provides. So we were sort of down on the whole idea of streaming. And eventually we came around to, well, I don't want to sit here and not hear live music, just us. Forget about, opening it up to a wider audience. But eventually we came around, and the next thing I knew is we're planning a streaming programming, which we have named Kente at Home. So starting in the spring of 2021, we went into a serious consideration of streaming through Kente at Home. And we were able to provide 7 concerts throughout the spring, summer, and into the fall of live music that obviously took hold in Pittsburgh. But I found that one thing about streaming, it goes beyond your venue where you live. And so we were taking a page out of Gail Boyd's book about having alternative venues. And they were received with, a great deal of excitement. And we knew then that we were fulfilling our mission, which is to present high quality music and of the African diaspora. And in this case, all of the options, no, they weren't all jazz. As a matter of fact, I'm going to let Mensah tell you who are the seven kind of programs that we had all during this year in our Kente at Home series.
Well, not that my memory is working that well these days, but I think we started out with Lakeisha Benjamin, and then was a great alto saxophonist, and then we featured
Richie Good.
Richard Goods was further down the road.
Was it?
Uh, the poet Chen Lo
Uh-huh.
and his production of 1963,
Yeah,
something like
Soundtrack
that.
63,
Yeah,
which was not a so-called jazz offering, but that is not what Kente necessarily wants to do all the time. So that was a great experience.
yeah, and so we had Dwayne Dolphin, uh, Richard Goods, Orrin Evans in the group,
South Samba,
South Samba, Alton
Alton Merrill, Dr. Alton Merrill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a nice variety in the period, So
And it was held outside in a tent that was provided by some of our friends uh, in this kind of jazz world in Pittsburgh, the city of Asylum, Alphabet City. So shout out to them. They had a tent set up not too far from for people who aren't from Pittsburgh, close to the stadiums here in Pittsburgh. And it was outside, so it was deemed safe. By this time, most people who wanted to, had two vaccinations at this point. And so they felt pretty safe. So outdoors in the summer, when in, when infections were going down and probably at an all-time low this year, and these friends of ours provided this huge tent. So you can't get more alternative than that, And it looked as though it had taken on so much that we said, well, let's try to see about going indoors, because by this time people had started to get their boost and masking and having proof of vaccination was certainly becoming some of those great, some of the ways in which people were going indoors. I got to tell you, I didn't feel that great. I still am very, you know, uh, about going indoors. But as far as I know, that went off with a hitch. And next thing you know, we were in October, November, starting to plan the series that we wanted to tell you about before this evening is over, which is our reopening event. But before we get to that, I think I'm getting questions. People want to know a little bit more about us. One of the questions I know that Gail likes to hear her guests talk about is, what was the first jazz music you ever heard? Mensah, can you remember?
Well, probably the first jazz music I heard was on the Armed Forces Station in Colon, Panama, where my mother listened to the Armed Forces Station. It played Count Basie, Duke Ellington. Her favorites were Nat Cole and Billy Eckstine. So that's when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Um, Coming to America in 1956, I was blessed to live around the corner from the Club Continental. You may have heard the song by Horace Silver, Cooking at the Continental. So I lived around the corner from it, and during the summertime, I could sit on the fire escape with a glass of milk and a sandwich and listen to the giants of the time. This is 1956, 57, 58. And, Sonny Rollins, Miles, Art Blakey, Horace Silver, J.J. Johnson. Those are the names that I saw on the billboard out in front of the place. And like I said, I get a sandwich, glass of milk, go out on the fire escape at night and listen to these guys and go to sleep. So that was my introduction as far as live music is concerned. And then later on, my sister Grace, she was good friends with Wynton Kelly, and took me around to different clubs, that would allow minors to come in. Things were a little bit different back then, but those were some of my experiences early.
Well, my first experience was not live music, unless you want to consider my father and my uncle playing in our house. But as far back as I can remember, the first jazz musician I remember being played in our house was the music of Joe Loco. And Joe Loco was a Puerto Rican jazz musician. He played piano, and I believe he played with Machito. Now, mind you, we're talking about Pittsburgh. There were no Puerto Ricans, and I would bet money on it in Pittsburgh in 1950. It's not New York, and it's not like a lot of major metropoli, I guess. But in any case, we lived in an extended family, kind of like Mensah's family too, where there were 8 people who lived in this big house. Don't imagine a mansion. It was pretty raggedy. But my father, my mother, and my siblings all lived in one bedroom. And my uncle, who was my mother's brother, was single. He didn't have any family other than us, no children at that time. So he had like a few more dollars than my father did, they had a unique relationship. They were brother-in-laws, but they were best friends. And so my uncle, with his couple of dollars, he would go buy Joe Loco records, and he would buy instruments. So one week he'd come in, he'd have a conga. The next week he'd come in, maybe a month later, he'd have bongo drums. He had an accordion. So he was kind of, I found out later, kind of spoiled. But what they did do together was play music, and they would play the music to Joe Loco. And we lived in a world of 78s and Joe Loco for a really long time. And I look back on it was a really happy time to listen to music, especially Latin American music. And I'll always remember those. And I didn't find out who Joe Loco was until I was about 30, 40 years old, because he wasn't a household name per se.
Well, the thing about it back then too, there wasn't this whole great variety of selections for different age groups. I listened to the music that my parents listened to. So did you. And, it was all good, fine. So this separation of, there's music for this generation and there's music for this generation, it's crazy in my head. But it's too late for me to change anything about that. I think that jazz was the popular music of my time, and I think yours.
Yeah.
It was the popular music. I went to dances with my parents, and there were jazz bands playing. I know for a fact I was at a dance with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers for Thanksgiving in 1957, 58. That's how it was. But it got dissipated along the way, and we just trying to keep the fire burning in terms of this great African American contribution to music and culture in America.
And I'd just like to say a little bit more about that and just move on. But in the 50s and 60s, I'm listening to Art Blakey and the Messengers and Horace Silver in our house. And sometimes Mensah and I are in the car riding around, like today, any day. We go on to Whole Foods or something, and we have music on. What's the name of the station? the radio station you have to,
ZUM.
yeah, ZUM, yes. And something will come on, and I'll sing every word to to music that I learned when I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. And sometimes I'll ask Mensah because I'll start singing it in the car, and I say, Mensah, what year was this? And he go, oh, I think about 52, 54, 55. And the only way I know the words is because of what I remember. Now, I don't have them all right. I mean, some of them I was singing phonetically. But Mensah's right. I was on a panel once with Willard Jenkins. I know everybody out here in the listening audience knows Willard. He's a big jazz fan and supporter. And we both said we listen to music on our iPhones and our iPods, and we don't listen to it in categories. We listen to it jumbled. What do they call it? They don't call it jumbled, but they'll say it's all mixed. Yeah, because that's the way we learned music, popular music back then. You know, one song is The Messengers, and then the next thing is Hank Ballard singing "Work with Me In." So that's the way we listen to our music, pretty scrambled. So that's our experiences. Believe it or not, even though Mensah and I were raised in two different continents, it came about us pretty much the same way. And most people our age, we learned it via radio a great deal and through our parents. But I remember the first jazz record I bought. Kinda. I believe I have it right. But I didn't buy it for me. It was the first money that I probably spent on a jazz record, but I bought it for my father. And he was a big Wes Montgomery fan. So I think it was Bumping in the Sunset. I was probably in high school or going on to college. I'm not sure the year. So that was the first jazz record I ever bought in a great big Sam Goody store. And I know everybody out there remembers Sam Goody. It was a major store record. It was a supermarket of records. And I mentioned, what was the first record you remember, jazz record you remember buying?
Well, the first jazz record I purchased was an accident. My first record that I purchased was Little Richard, and I wanted Little Richard music every day. But in 1957, 58, my parents had a Grundig Majestic, and I wasn't allowed to play it until after my chores were done on Saturday afternoon. So I bought the record on Friday and couldn't sleep Friday night into Saturday, and got up Saturday all excited and did the chores and got in there in the afternoon and put that record on, and Long Tall Sally, and all of that. Friday night I just got paid and I was rocking it, pumped the volume up, and I was having a happy time. And my mother walked in the room and she said, either it goes or you go. Well, back in those days, you could just stick the record back in the envelope, the paper covering and the album cover, and I took it back down to Burdell's, and he told me, say, pick out something else. So I looked around, not knowing what I wanted, because the only record I wanted was Little Richard. So I saw this album cover. It was blue, and it was a guy who looked like he was walking out of the bushes with a saxophone case, and it turned out to be Lou Donaldson's Blues Walk. And I brought that home and put it on, and it was all right with moms, and that was my groove. We danced to that music on that record at parties practically at least 4 or 5 years. And I still hear music from that album played on the radios today. Lou Donaldson's Blues Walk.
And let's see, we could take that all the way to the day and just say really briefly about who do we listen to now. And all the people we've mentioned, except Joe Loco, I wouldn't even know how to get a Joe Loco record. But me, I like to listen to, Mensah knows this. I know this. I'm much narrower than Mensah. If I'm listening to Pharaoh Saunders from here until I close my eyes, I'm pretty happy. Although there's a whole lot more musicians I like. What about you, Mensah? Who you listened to lately? Say this week.
Kenny Garrett,
Oh yeah.
but yes, this week.
Yeah, I'm
But
this week too.
there's plenty.
Mhm.
There's plenty. You won't want to spend the time doing that.
Well, we're going to try to wind down, and people out there, if you were fans of ours, have something for you. And if you're new fans of ours today, I'd like to have something for you. And that is to talk about our upcoming reopening series. So, starting on February 19th, we'll be bringing in.
The cookers, the
Se-
cookers. If you know anything about music and you've been around it, when you hear they cooking, the pots are on. So there's this group of little known people, the cookers. If you've never heard the name, check them out. It's going to be a very, very, very strong presentation.
Two of the members this year, that's two out of the seven members, both received NEA Jazz Master uh, recognition this year.
Mhm.
So coming up the following month on March the 19th is Charles Mcpherson, who I believe Gail has had on her show as well. Nancy, you want to say a little bit about Charles?
Charles is coming in with a quintet that includes Terrell Stafford on the front line. And what can you say about Charles McPherson? He's been around since the 60s and played with Charles Mingus and has done everything from solo work to orchestra, uh, symphonic presentations. So, there's plenty of good food in the Charles McPherson book.
And we're going to finish our reopening series in the spring with Vanessa Rubin, a great vocalist, and I'm sure Mensah can talk a little bit about Vanessa before we move on.
Well, she's doing a project based on the music of Thad Dameron. And uh, Vanessa is from Ohio. Thad Dameron is from Ohio. And he's written a lot of good music that most of us have heard over the years in this jazz world. And you may not recognize it as a Thad Dameron piece, but when you hear it, you'll know it. Look forward.
So, for anybody who wants to hear more what Kente is doing, go to our website. Our website is kentearts.org. And there's the same information we've covered today in terms of our reopening. You'll find there. We're at the We're at the New Hazlet Theater, and the New Hazlet Theater also will be promoting the event as well. So Kente Arts Alliance, you can find us at kentearts.org. The theater that we lease is the New Hazlet Theater, and you can find us at least the reopening series on the New Hazlet Theater website as well. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for spending this time with us. Thank Gail Boyd again for allowing us this opportunity to talk about Kente Arts Alliance. And I wish you all well for the rest of the year. Let's hope this pandemic is over soon And we'll all meet again in that wonderful place where we will listen to live music.
Shit.